Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So for today's case I'm going to be talking to you about is the murder of Sarah Payne. So Sarah Evelyn Isabel Payne was born on 13th of October 1991 and she sadly passed away on the 1st of July 2000. She was the victim of a high-profile abduction and murder in West Sussex in England in July 2000. Her disappearance and the subsequent investigation into a murder become very prominent in the case, and this is in the United Kingdom, as did the campaign for changes to child protection legislation and resulted from the murder. The murder investigation was also notable for the use of forensic evidence, which played a major role in securing a conviction. Roy Whiting was convicted of abducting and the murder in December 2001 and sentenced to life imprisonment. Sarah Payne, who had been living in Hersham in Surrey, disappeared on the evening of the 1st of July 2000 from a cornfield that was near the home of her grandfather Terence Payne and his second wife Leslie in Kingston Gorse, which is in West Sussex in England. Payne had been playing with her two brothers, aged 13 and 11 at the time, and a younger sister who was aged 5 when she had disappeared. A police search of the local area commenced and quickly transformed into a nationwide search and national news story, with members of the Payne family, mostly her parents, Michael and Sarah, making numerous television and newspaper appeals for her safe return. On the evening of the 2nd of July 2000, officers from Sussex Police first visited Roy Whiting at his seafront flat that is in Littlehampton as part of their inquiries into the Sarah Payne's disappearance. A number of other suspects, particularly convicted sex offenders, were also questioned and at least one other person was arrested. Police officers and numerous volunteers scoured the area around Littlehampton for clues to Sarah's disappearance, and her family made daily appeals on the national television. This is on the news. This was for helping to find her. On July the 10th, police announced that they had been receiving of information regarding a sighting of a little girl who had matched Sarah's description in Knutsford services. And this was on on the M6 motorway in Cheshire on the morning of her disappearance. 3 days later, Michael and Sarah Payne were then warned by police to prepare for the worst, explaining that the emphasis of the inquiries had shifted and that there was a possibility that their daughter might not be found safe and well. On the 17th of July, a body was found in a field that was near Pulborough, that was in West Sussex, some 15 miles from Kingston Gorse, where Sarah Payne had later disappeared. The next day, Sussex police confirmed that the body had been identified as that of Sarah Payne, and a murder investigation had then been commenced. Roy Whiting was first questioned in the disappearance of Sarah Payne, which had taken place within 5 miles of his Littlehampton seafront flat some 24 hours after she was missing. Whiting then was routinely questioned as he was known to the police as a convicted sex offender. Police first visited Whiting's flat on the afternoon of the 2nd of July 2000, but he was not there. The police returned that evening and questioned Whiting for over an hour before leaving. The officers left Whiting's flat but were suspicious of the apparent lack of concern for Sarah, which differed from the attitude of at least one other known sex offender who had readily been questioned. When Whiting had soon appeared afterwards and attempted to drive away in his van, he was stopped by the police. He spent 2 days in custody, but the police had no concrete evidence to press any charges, although they had found a receipt for fuel back at Buckbarn garage that was near Pulborough, which then contradicted his alibi of being at a funfair in Hove at 5:30 p.m. and that returning to his flat by 9:30 p.m. on the night that Sarah disappeared. Whiting was released on bail, and police had found a receipt for the fuel from Buckbarn Garage on the A24, not far from Coolham, where one of Payne's shoes had sadly been found, contradicting to his alibi. After his initial arrest, Whiting did not return to his Littlehampton flat and went to live with his father in Crawley. On 20th of July, 3 days after Sarah Payne's body was found, a shoe was recovered from a roadside in a village of Coolham, 3 miles from Pulborough, and identified as one of those that was belonging to Sarah Payne. On 23rd of July 2000, Whiting stole a Vauxhall Nova in Crawley and was pursued by police at the speeds of up to 70 miles per hour. Before crashing into a parked vehicle, Whiting was arrested on charge of a dangerous driving, and then he was remanded in custody until the 27th of September 2000, when he admitted to charges and was jailed for 22 months. After Whiting began his jail term for the car theft and dangerous driving, detectives then had carried out some forensic tests on his 1988 white Fiat Ducato van, which then he bought on 23rd of June 2000. On 6th of February 2001, following 7 months of investigating, Whiting was charged then with the murder of Sarah Payne. On 6th of February 2001, Whiting appeared at Lewes Crown Court and was charged with abduction and murder. Whiting pleaded not guilty to both charges and was remanded in custody while he was still serving his sentence for the motoring offences. But the new charges against him prevented his release from prison during the summer of that year. Whiting's trial began on 14th of November 2001 at Lewes Crown Court. The jury heard from several witnesses. The key witnesses included Sarah Payne's oldest brother, who had been seen a scruffy-looking man with yellowish teeth that was driving through Kensington Gauze in the evening of Sarah Payne's disappearance. Lee Payne did not pick out Whiting, however, when he was selected for an identity parade. One of Payne's shoes was found by a member of the public in a country lane, and forensic tests had been found in fibres from Whiting's van on the shore. This was the only item of Payne's clothing that was to be recovered. A strand of blonde hair on a t-shirt was found in Whiting's van. A DNA test then established there was 1 in a billion chance of it belonging to anyone other than Payne. The jury also heard that the testimony of 2 motorists who recalled a white van being parked on the roadside and pulling off track on the evening of 1st of July 2000, near the site where Payne's body had later been found. 12th of December 2001, after a 4-week trial before Mr. Justice Curtis and a jury, Whiting was then convicted of the abduction and murder of Payne, and he was sentenced to life imprisonment. The trial then judge said it was a rare case in which a life sentence should mean life. After Whiting had been convicted, his previous convictions were revealed, which had been withheld from the jury and the media. Police feared that any knowledge of his past conviction could jeopardize the trial. In the event of being convicted, Whiting could argue that he had been tried on the evidence of the earlier crime, paving the way for an appeal and possible freedom. The fact that Whiting had now been exposed as a repeat offender sparked renewed calls for the government to allow controlled public access to the sex offenders register. Although on the day after Whiting's conviction, the Home Office commented that such a system would be unworkable, running the risk of driving paedophiles underground, making it more difficult for the police to monitor and locate them and putting them in danger of a vigilant attack. This case is also notable for the extensive use of forensic science in establishing the prosecution case against Whiting. 20 forensic experts from a variety of fields were employed that was during the inquiry, including entomology, paleology, and environmental profiling, oil and lubricant analysis, pathology, geology, archaeology. It has been estimated that the investigation involved 1,000 personnel and cost nearly £3 million on the 24th of November 2002. Home Secretary David Blunkett ordered that Roy Whiting must serve a minimum of 50 years in prison. This made him ineligible for parole until 2051, when he would be at least 92 before parole, before he can be considered. This was in effect an agreement with the trial judge recommendations of a whole life tariff. Within 48 hours of the ruling being made, the law lords of the European Court of Human Rights had then ruled out in favour of another convicted murderer, Anthony Anderson, who was challenging the right of politicians to decide how long a murderer must spend in prison before being considered in parole. In June 2004, the media reported that Whiting would apply to the Court of Appeal of reduction of his 50-year minimum sentence. On 9th of June 2010, Whiting's appeal resulted in a High Court judge reducing his 50-year jail term by 10 years. Whiting's lawyers argued that the 50-year tariff was politically motivated. The decision then was made at the time when the government was under fire from the public and the media over the firefighter strike. Mr. Justice Simon said that under 2010 sentencing guidelines that Whiting might have received a whole life tariff. Whiting is now serving a 40-year minimum term, which then will keep him in prison until at least 2041, when he will be 82. Payne's mother, Sarah, was then present and said that she had been very disappointed by the decision and said that life should mean life. Roy William Whiting, the man found guilty of murdering Sarah Payne, was born in Horsham on 26 January 1959 and grew up in Crawley, where he lived for most of his life until he had been convicted of the murder. He was one of 6 children born to George and Pamela Whiting, but 3 of his siblings died in infancy. He grew up in a Langley Green, Crowley, in June 1986. He had married Linda Booker. Then they had separated before their son was born the following year and divorced in 1990. Whiting also fathered a daughter with another unnamed woman around 1990. Whiting was involved in a banger racing during his 20s and 30s, but eventually abandoned his interest in sport due to lack of success. On 4th of March 1995, a 8-year-old girl was abducted and sexually assaulted in the Langley Green area of Crowley. Whiting was arrested several weeks later. A man who knew his name came forward after hearing about the abductor's car that was a red Ford Sierra, which matched the description of the car which Whiting had just sold. The vehicle then was traced by police to its new owner and a knife was found hidden in it. On 23rd of June 1995, Whiting admitted charges of abduction and indecent assault and was sentenced to 4 years in prison. Maximum sentence for the crime was then life imprisonment. However, he received a lesser sentence because he had admitted to the crime at an early opportunity. Although a psychiatrist was assessed, Whiting, after his conviction, said that he was likely to reoffend once he had been released. Whiting was released from prison in November 1997, having served 2 years, 5 months of his 4-year sentence, and was one of the first people in Britain to go on the sex offenders register. He had been forced to serve an extra 5 months in prison before being released on licence as a penalty then for refusing to participate in a sex offenders rehabilitation programme. On 24th of November 2002, it was announced that Home Secretary David Blunkett had imposed a 50-year minimum sentence on Whiting, which meant that he would not be released from prison until 2051 at the age of 92. Shortly afterwards, the High Court and European Court of Human Rights ruled in favour of another convicted murderer, Anthony Anderson, who was channeling the Home Secretary's right to decide whether a life sentence prisoner should be considered for parole. In June 2004, the media reported that Whiting would appeal to the High Court for his sentence to be reduced. Whiting's appeal then against the ruling was heard on 9th of June 2010 at the High Court, which now has a final say on when or if life sentences prisoners can be considered for parole. Whiting's lawyers argued that Blunkett's decision was politically motivated, as he had known for some time that he was likely to be stripped of his powers to decide on a minimum term for life sentence prisoners, that the government was under fire from British public due to the firefighters that was on strike, and that this would be an opportunity of setting a 50-year tariff for Whiting. The move that would then prove popular with voters due to the high profile of the crime and the fact that it was still relatively fresh and then in the public's imagination. Shortly before the decision had then been announced, Myra Hindley had died. She had been the life sentence prisoner whose minimum sentence had been gradually increased from 25 years to a whole life tariff by a succession of Home Secretaries, causing Hindley and her supporters to claim that her sentence was being increased in a similar fashion as Whiting's. The High Court reduced Whiting's minimum term to 40 years, bringing forward his parole date to 2041, making him eligible for parole at the age of 82. 4th of August 2002. Whiting was attacked with a razor by another prisoner while fetching hot water at HMP Wakefield. In June 2004, convicted murderer Ricky Tregasis was found guilty of carrying out slashing that left Whiting with a 6-inch scar on his right cheek. Tregasis, then serving life for the murder of a disabled man that was in Cornwall, received a 6-year sentence. In July 2011, Whiting was again attacked in prison and was stabbed in the eye. No charge had been pressed by Whiting, and consequently a police investigation into the assault was not undertaken. Whiting's injuries was not life-threatening. Third attack on Whiting took place on 8th of November 2018 when he was stabbed by 2 other prisoners in his cell at HMP Wakefield. He was taken to hospital for treatment but returned to prison shortly after the stable condition. Sarah's Law. So Sarah's Law redirects for the US proposal. So there is some criminal records that is saying the campaign for Sarah's Law was spearheaded by the News of the World newspaper and began in July 2000 in response to Payne's murder. This became the campaign for which was known as Sarah's Law, named after Megan's Law that was in the United States, following a similar case that was several years earlier. Her parents backed the campaign as they were sure that their daughter's killer was a previous convicted child sex offender. Their belief was proven correct 17 months later when Roy Whiting had been found guilty of the murder, and it was revealed that he already had a conviction for abducting and indecently assaulting an 8-year-old girl. The aim of the campaign then was for the government to allow controlled access to the sex offender registry, so parents with young children could know if a child sex offender lived in their area. Payne's mother has always insisted that such a law would have saved her daughter's life. Modified scheme then, whereby parents can inquire about a name an individual who has regular access to the children. Was introduced in a 4 pilot area of England and Wales in September 2008. In August 2010, the Home Office announced that the proven successful the Child Sex Offenders Disclosures Scheme would then be extended to cover the whole of England and Wales by spring 2011. This law allows parents to ask the police if somebody with regular access to the children has a record of sexual offences. 2004, the book Sarah Payne, A Mother's Story by Payne's mother, Sarah Payne, had been talking about her daughter's murder and the campaign for Sarah's Law that had been published then by Hodder and Stoughton. In July 2001, it was reported that Payne's parents received £11,000 compensation from a Criminal Injuries Compensation Authority, an excessive agency of the UK government. Sarah Payne then described the offer as a sick joke, a derisory, even though it was maximum CICA that could be offered by the law. Media sources were also keen to criticise the payout and compare it to a higher payout that was made in criminal and civil law for relatively minor injuries and work-related stress. Sarah Payne was made a member of the Order of the British Empire, which was the MBE. This was in December 2008 for her work towards the passing of Sarah's Law. And in December 2009, she had gone and suffered a threatening stroke that had made her collapse while she was at home, but went on to make a good recovery. In July 2011, it was revealed that Sarah Payne had then been among those being targeted in the news in the international phone hacking scandal. Payne refused to believe it, since the news of the world had been so helpful in championing in Sarah's Law. She even wrote an editorial of newspaper's final edition. The investigators then initially thought that she was not hacked because her name did not come up in any records. However, personal details relating to her were found in the name that did not come up. Who attributed to another suspected victim. Sarah's phone that was hacked was given to her by the News of the World, Rebecca Brooks, the editor of the same time of Sarah's murder. Sarah Payne's father, Michael, had suffered from depression following the disappearance of his daughter. He separated from his wife of 18 years in August 2003 and subsequently became an alcoholic, leading a 16-month jail term for attacking his own brother with a glass in December 2011 while intoxicated. On 30th of October 2014, he was found dead at his home in Maidstone, Kent. Police reported that there was no suspicious circumstances and he believed that they had died of alcohol-related illness several days before his body had been found. Okay then everyone, so that is today's case. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and I'll see you again next time. Take care. Bye bye.